You will hear a telephone conversation between an employee of an airline company and a customer. You have 30 seconds to look at questions 1 to 6.
GB Airlines, this is Kyle speaking. How can I help?
Hi, my name is Matt Walsh. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. John Sparrow to claim expenses for a delay in his flight last week.
Good morning, Mr. Walsh. Thank you for calling. Could you please tell me the flight number and the date of departure?
The date of departure was the 24th of January, 2016. I'm afraid I don't have the flight number in front of me at the moment.
Okay, that's all right. One moment. Could you tell me where was Mr. Sparrow departing from?
He was departing from Athens.
Is that Athens, Greece or Athens, Georgia?
Athens, Greece.
Right. And what was the destination?
It was Heathrow, London.
Right. We've got 2 flights from Athens to London, Heathrow, on the 24th of January 2016. Was it the 3:25 p.m. flight or the 9:45 p.m.?
It was the later one, 9:45.
Okay, so the flight number is GB1011.
Right, okay.
Okay, yes. I can see that Mr. Sparrow's flight was cancelled and he was booked on the next flight on the 25th of January at 3:25 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
According to our system, one of my colleagues spoke with Mr. Sparrow on the phone on the 24th to inform him of the cancellation and offered to book a hotel for him for the night, but Mr. Sparrow preferred to book one himself.
Yes, because he didn't want to stay near the airport, as the next flight was in the afternoon.
Yes, of course. Could you tell me which hotel he stayed at?
Yes, he stayed at the Hypnos Hotel.
Oh, could you spell that for me?
Of course. That's Hypnos.
Right. Thank you for that. And could you please tell me how much the total cost was for the night?
Sure. It was 73 euros.
Right. Do you have a copy of the receipt for that?
Yes, of course. Would you like me to send it to you?
Yes, please.
Can I email a picture of it to you?
Absolutely. The email address is refunds@gbairlines.co.uk.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Were there any other expenses you wish to claim?
Actually, yes. There was also the taxi ride to the airport and the taxi ride back the next day.
Right. And what was the total cost?
The first taxi ride was 53 euros and the second one was 42, so 63, 73, 83. Yeah, so the total was 95 euros. I'll send you the receipt for those as well.
Thank you. Are there any other expenses?
No, I think that's it.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 7 to 10.
Excellent. So if you could please send us the receipts for the hotel and the taxi rides, and after we receive them, it should take about 48 hours for the funds to reach Mr. Sparrow's account.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Actually, yes. There's one more thing. Mr. Sparrow complained about the meal during the flight. He said that it was a bit bland.
Right.
So he asked me if it was possible to switch to a different meal option for his upcoming flight to Kiev next week.
Right, of course. Just give me a minute, please. Right, I see that Mr. Sparrow had the light meal option for his flight to London, and you would like to change that. What would you like to change it to?
What are the other options?
We've got 12 different meal options. Would you like me to list all of them for you?
Well, Mr. Sparrow has told me that he would prefer something without meat. How many of these do not contain meat?
We've got 3 meal options without meat. We've got the vegetarian option, the vegan option, and the Asian vegetarian.
What's the difference?
There's a variety of different dishes served with each option. For example, next week the vegetarian option will be a small spinach and feta cheese pie, a bread roll, a salad, and tropical fruit.
And the vegan option?
The vegan option doesn't include any dairy products, and it also doesn't include fowl, eggs, or honey. I'm afraid I don't have the specific menu for this week, but I can email it to you as soon as it becomes available.
Oh, could you do that? That would be great.
Yes, of course. I can email you a detailed description of all the meal options if you like.
Yes, please.
No problem. Please do not forget to call us back to change the meal option. You need to do that 48 hours before the departure time for international flights and 24 hours for domestic flights.
So 48 hours for this one then?
Yes, exactly.
Perfect.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Transatlantic flights require 48 hours. All flights within Europe require 24 hours. So in this case, you will need to call us 24 hours in advance. I apologise for that.
Okay, great.
So, could I please have your email address so I can send you the menus?
Certainly. It's matt.walsh@sparrowlimited.com.
Now turn to section 2. You will hear a man talking about areas for growing vegetables in towns called allotments. First, you had some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Listen carefully to the first part of the talk and answer questions 11 to 14.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to see so many of you. I was going to start by saying that more and more people are seeing the value of growing their own fruit and vegetables, but now I don't need to. First of all, let me say that whether you have a garden or not, there are all sorts of benefits to having a plot of land you can call your own, and it will give you a great sense of satisfaction. Okay, let's assume you have a garden. Chances are it's small. Most gardens in cities are hardly big enough for a few pots of herbs and a couple of rows of beans. Now that's where allotments come in. A typical plot is around 250 square meters, big enough to feed the family for a year. Big enough, too, to grow a whole range of vegetables, fruit as well perhaps, not just cabbages and potatoes. Moving on to the social aspects of an allotment. How many people can say their garden is a meeting place? You might chat with your next-door neighbour every now and again, but allotments are notorious communal hives. There are usually between 10 and 30 plots on any allotment site, and they bring together people from all sorts of social backgrounds. Where else do you find a lawyer deep in conversation with a lorry driver? There's often a great sense of camaraderie, with initiatives to involve the wider community, including the less able, the retired, and the unemployed. In urban areas nowadays, people may have a tiny yard or a balcony, but it's not a garden. An allotment is a huge recreational asset for anyone in that situation. First of all, there's the exercise. Renting an allotment costs around £30 a month. That's generally a lot cheaper than joining a gym. Then there's the involvement with nature. Watching seeds grow into mature plants gives so much pleasure and such a sense of achievement. Spending time outside in the fresh air boosts our mental as well as physical well-being. And one more thing. Don't forget allotments are also an enormous benefit to the environment. They provide invaluable green space in our ever more clogged-up towns and cities, making them more sustainable and appealing to live in. These spaces provide a habitat for wild plants, birds, insects, and occasionally bigger animals. What's more, locally grown food doesn't have to be transported long distances, and that helps to reduce road traffic and hence pollution.
Now you have some time to look at questions 15 to 17. Now listen to the next part of the talk and answer questions 15 to 17.
Now, food. A subject we all like talking about. Because the main appeal of an allotment is obviously taking home all the freshly picked vegetables and fruit. So why is Grow Your Own so good? Well, to start with, there's the superior flavour. Food you've grown yourself tastes infinitely better than anything bought in the supermarket because it will be super fresh. Another point in its favour is the range. These days, gardeners are growing an amazing variety of vegetables on their allotments. Finally, there's the bonus of knowing that the produce you've grown is organic. You know that what you're eating wasn't grown on an industrial-scale farm or sprayed with large amounts of pesticides.
Now you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen to the next part of the talk and answer questions 18 to 20.
Now I'm going to show you a typical allotment from the site closest to here on Finley Road. Let me just get this image up. That's it. Can everyone see? So, as you can see here, each plot has a fence around it and its own gate. Between the beds are grass walkways. That means you can walk in and around comfortably and not get your boots too muddy. There are soil beds on either side. This plot, in fact, has two smaller flower beds opposite a much larger area for vegetables. And there's also a glass house for growing tomatoes or anything that needs more warmth and protection. Here you can see one of those at the front near the gate. Most allotments have their own shed at the far end, as you can see. Allotments do need a water source, though, and there are stone sinks outside the sheds. A hose pipe can be attached to the tap for easy watering. Some of the plots have a pond, though they're not always popular as they tend to attract insects. And this plot has a compost bin at the end opposite the shed for recycling organic waste. Right. So, how to go about getting an allotment?
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear a conversation between a lecturer and a psychology student asking for advice about research methods. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Good morning. Now, what is it you want to discuss today?
Good morning, Dr. Reed. This assignment you've given us is the first psychology experiment I've had to do, and I'm not sure where to begin or which steps to take.
Well, conducting your first psychology experiment can be quite a complicated and confusing process, but just remember that, like other sciences, psychology uses the scientific method and bases its conclusions upon empirical evidence.
What do you mean by empirical evidence?
Well, empirical evidence is established by observation rather than theory.
And the scientific method?
Oh, yes. When conducting an experiment, you need to follow a few basic steps.
I know the first step is to come up with a research question or problem.
Yes, a question that can be tested.
How do I find an appropriate question?
I would suggest one of three methods. Firstly, you can investigate a commonly held belief, or what we call folk psychology.
I see. So I could examine the belief that staying up all night to study for an important exam can adversely affect test performance.
That's right. In that case, you would compare the scores of students who stayed up all night with those of students who got a good night's sleep.
I think I could do that.
Well, alternatively, you might want to consider reviewing the literature on psychology. You know, published studies can be a good source of unanswered research questions. I'm sure you've read papers where the authors note the need for further research.
So I would come up with some questions that remain unanswered.
Correct. But there is a third source of ideas. Just think about everyday problems and then consider how you could investigate potential solutions.
OK. Perhaps I could study various memorization strategies to find out which are the most effective.
That's the idea. Next, you need to define the variables. You know, anything that might have an effect on the outcome of your research.
Yes, I remember we learnt about that last week.
Yes, that's right. Then you have to develop a testable hypothesis that predicts how the variables are related.
For example, students who are sleep-deprived will perform worse in an exam than students who are not sleep-deprived.
Exactly. Once you have developed a hypothesis, you must carry out background research.
I can use books, journals, online databases and websites.
Yes, all of those. I covered the reasons for background research in last Friday's lecture, didn't I? What you have to remember at this stage is to take careful notes and generate a bibliography of your sources.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30. OK, I've got that. Then I'm ready to develop an experimental design.
Well, again, you have a choice. There are three basic designs, and each has its own strengths and weaknesses. The pre-experimental design does not include a control group, so there is no comparison. What we call a quasi-experimental design does incorporate a control group, but there is no randomization, whereas a true experimental design has both control groups and random assignment to groups.
You've also told us about standardization of procedures. Is this where that comes in? Being sure to compare apples to apples?
Absolutely. Going back to your sleep deprivation example, the same exam would have to be given to each participant in the same way at the same time, etc.
Got it.
When selecting subjects, you need to consider different techniques. If you were to go through with your sleep deprivation experiment, you would need to ensure that your experimental and control groups were standardized. That is, all third-year accounting students, for instance. A simple random sample involves choosing a number of participants from a group of similar people. On the other hand, a different kind of study might involve a stratified random sample, where participants are randomly chosen from different subsets of the population.
You mean subsets with distinctive characteristics, like age, gender, race, socioeconomic status, and so on?
Precisely. Then the next step is to actually conduct the experiment and collect the data.
Then I have to analyze the data.
I'll be dealing with the statistical methods for analysing data in next week's lecture.
Oh, good. I guess all that's left then is to write up the data.
Yes, communicating your results is important, and in the next couple of lectures, I'll be covering the format and structure of a psychology paper and tips for writing each section.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. I feel much more confident in getting started now. Thank you for taking the time to see me. That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear the beginning of a lecture about the Roberts Company. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning. In the last few lectures, I've been talking about the history of technology in the modern world. But today, I want to use Roberts as our case study, which is a company that develops complex camera technology for a range of industries and disciplines. Since the camera was invented in 1816, it has changed and improved dramatically, with cameras now in existence that can fit on the head of a pin. The company has been founded on a series of principles by which the company operates in its day-to-day business, the most important of these being to enhance the present development of camera technology. Roberts has a philosophy pioneering innovation, having been responsible for the invention of numerous technologies since it was founded by Dwayne Roberts in 1957. It has achieved many of its aims over the years, but its principles and founding aim persists through time, which is to explore new facts and imagine the unimaginable. The cameras produced by Roberts have a multitude of potential applications that are currently being explored. One of these is an anti-gravity camera that they aim to attach to a space satellite from where it will record live, high-definition video and provide fascinating new views of planet Earth. It could also prove useful in exploring other planets by providing researchers with never-before-seen images of the universe. Roberts are also experimenting with attaching the cameras to small drones that will fly through the rainforest in search of plants that could be used to develop future medicine. The camera also has the potential to be used on the roads. As it is 20% cheaper than the speed cameras that are currently in operation, this means that more of them could be distributed across the road network, where they can control traffic by making sure that all cars abide by the speed regulations. Despite this diverse range of potential applications, the cameras are presently used for very different, more domestic purposes. Roberts' cameras are presently used as nanny cams, which allow parents to watch their nannies to ensure that they are responsibly attending to the children that they have been employed to care for. These cameras give parents peace of mind and more control over their child's welfare whilst they are at work or otherwise occupied. The highest sales of the company are in toys that have the cameras hidden within them. This clever idea means that the cameras are camouflaged from view and do not look out of place in the child's nursery. The toys are also very robust, so children can play with them without damaging them in the process. The toys are designed to look like animals and come in a range of shapes, sizes and colors, as well as different animal species such as monkeys and bears. These toys are incredibly popular and can be bought in any toy store for only $20. Always eager to be constantly improving their products, Roberts are now working on a product that will change the way people see photography. This new contraption is a mini camera that is built into eyewear such as glasses and sunglasses, where it can capture the world as you see it. Holidaymakers and tourists no longer have to carry a big, heavy camera around with them on their travels. They can instead purchase a set of eyewear with a built-in camera, which will capture the moment with a simple tap. Roberts are also developing a model of this tiny camera for use during medical procedures and operations. The camera will be used during non-invasive keyhole surgeries to enable the surgeon to see what they are doing inside the body without having to make a large incision. This innovative application for the camera could make surgeries a lot faster, and the saved time and energy will also make it far more efficient. As the patient will no longer have to undergo a large incision for their surgery, it also means that their recovery will be much faster with a greatly reduced chance of post-op infection. If any of you have an interest in working in this field of technological invention, Roberts is a very diverse and fast-growing company that would be a fantastic internship opportunity. Every year they organize a series of competitions where entrants stand the chance of winning a place in their internship program. So I would suggest that all of you enter. That wraps up the lecture for today. Please remember that attendance is mandatory.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.